Australië, het land van de permacultuur. Permacultuur is een landbouwsysteem gebaseerd op het principe dat willen we de natuur verbeteren, dan moeten we haar observeren en kopiëren. Niet exploiteren en vervuilen. Wil een beschaving overleven, dan moet zij in grote mate in haar eigen behoeftes kunnen voorzien. Anders is zij uiteindelijk ten dode opgeschreven. Permacultuur is een systeem ontwikkeld door de Australiër Bill Mollison. En hij propageert dus kijken naar het geheel in plaats van naar een enkel element. Hij heeft daartoe traditionele boerenwijsheden samengebracht met moderne wetenschappelijke technieken. In Australië en ook in vele andere delen van de wereld zijn inmiddels miljoenen mensen bezig deze verandering toe te passen door niet alleen met energie anders te werken en het energieverbruik te veranderen en te verminderen, maar ook daadwerkelijk de permacultuurprincipes verder toe te passen. Het hoe en waarom gaan we u proberen duidelijk te maken in de volgende afleveringen van dit programma over permacultuur. Permacultuur is werken met de natuurkracht, niet tegen haar. Want omdat we menen superieur te zijn als mens, gaan we uiteindelijk tegen onszelf in en wordt het verlies gaandeweg overduidelijk. Het woord permacultuur is overigens een samentrekking van de woorden permanent en cultuur. Om kennis te maken met hoe permacultuur nu daadwerkelijk werkt, zijn we op bezoek gegaan bij Jenny en Greg. Zij hebben hun leven in de stad opgezegd tot een leven in de natuur en te werken met de principes van de permacultuur. Tell me why you started permaculture.
Yeah, about 5 years ago we decided that we didn't like the way things were going with normal agriculture. We didn't like all the chemicals that were being used. And if you look around the world, you find a lot of people with, especially asthma, seems to be getting worse and worse. So we thought, well, there's got to be something better. We tried to buy organic food, and it was, well, a lot of times very expensive, but very unreliable sources. So we decided that that's the way we wanted to go. Permaculture we look at as a whole lifestyle rather than just organic growing.
Mm-hmm.
It's more just the way you think about everything, thinking about the future, thinking about all your impacts on the earth. So we decided that, yeah, we'd like to get away from a city where we were living.
Yeah.
We did have a small permaculture garden on the house block that we had. But yeah, we moved away, bought this property which is 5 acres, and we've started to develop our own garden, working along permaculture principles. So we're starting to set up the different zones that are involved. The chook pen that we've got, we read a lot about different pens that were around and different ideas of crop rotation, etc. And we thought, well, that's a good way to go, and we developed our own concept there, and we've gone with that to suit the local conditions.
Right. Do you think you can make a living out of this permaculture in the future?
Possibly in the future, yes. At the moment we're both working full time, so it's very hard. We basically do our permaculture bit on the weekend. We've got, as we discussed before, woofers coming in and helping us, and they're really good because they get a lot of work done for us when we're not here. But basically what we try and do is we do our bit by doing other permaculture things. One of the things is by, for example, not buying into the big supermarket chains. Here we have a supermarket called Woolworths that dictates the prices to all of the farmers. They say that they want to buy, for example, broccoli from a farmer for so much, and they will pay that price all year round, regardless of what they sell it for in the shop. So basically we think they're ripping off the farmer, and the farmers think that as well. So what we try to do here is we try and go to the smaller people, the smaller supermarkets that maybe sell it at a little bit higher, but in the future it won't be a higher price. What Woolworths do in the big supermarket chains is they try and knock out the smaller competition, and then when they're gone, of course there's no competition, so they put up their prices, so the net effect is that you're paying exactly the same. So we support the local guy, which he gives employment to the local people. Our local guy here also sells a lot of organic food. I don't know if you have that in Holland where a lot of your supermarkets do that, but our fellow is of the opinion that organics is best, which is what we think too. So we go and buy there. He will also buy produce off us if we have excess, which is a good thing to know. And basically that's one of the things that we try and do, seeing we're not working this full time, is to go and buy off the smaller chains or the smaller franchises rather than the big supermarket chains across the country.
Vervolgens gingen we op bezoek bij Jenny Allen, schrijfster van permacultuurboeken en docente permacultuur aan het bekende eco-village Crystal Waters. Zij woont hier te midden van haar prachtige permacultuurtuin en haar zelfgebouwde huis, waar ze ook haar cursussen geeft. Why did you start a permaculture garden here in Australia?
Because I get everything I want. I've got herbs that I use in the kitchen, and I use them for medicinal reasons as well. I've got a lot of vegetables. I've got shade trees to sit under. I've got trees that attract birds, so at night time I can watch the birds rather than having to watch TV.
But why permaculture? I mean, you could do that also in a normal organic way. What is the difference between
normal organics is often straight lines. It's not necessarily integrating, for example, windbreaks and pest management and looking at the whole ecosystem. Basically in permaculture we try to emulate ecosystems. So we see what happens in nature, we study nature, and then we bring the principles of nature back into the garden. And so that helps us have a much more stable, resilient system. Whereas often organic agriculture, they might have lines and lines of vegetables. The pests then, they'll walk down the rows of vegetables and just eat away at the vegetables like us walking down the supermarket and not paying at the end.
So that's a different way of looking at, well, nature altogether. I mean, you're just really working with it instead of against it.
Yeah, so for example in my vegetable garden I've got a lot of aromatic plants, so the smell of them confuses pests. Pests also go for particular vegetables because of the shape of the vegetables, so I've got other plants to confuse the pest about the shape of the vegetables, and so that helps with my pest management plan. I've got particular flowers that attract predators, so the predators are the particular insects that prey on pests. So it's like a whole complexity of things happening in the garden while I'm lying in the hammock.
So does it mean it takes a lot of designing beforehand?
I think what a lot of people tend to do is rush into a garden, plant it all out, and then realise that maybe they've got, for example, quite hungry, aggressive trees next to their vegetable garden that steal the nutrients from their garden. For me, the most important thing and the backbone of permaculture is design. And design can take a lot of time, a lot of research, and you need quite a detailed understanding of ecological systems. But once you get those in place, then your garden works for you. And for me, the secret is I can go away and my garden actually gets better. Whereas a lot of gardens, people go away and their garden deteriorates and they're concerned that maybe it's drying out or the pests are taking over or the weeds are taking over. Yet I know in my system that I've got ground covers that have smothered the weeds or mulch that are keeping the weeds out. I've got a lot of trenches in there which hold water and release it slowly. And for my pest management, I've got the flowers that are attracting things to eat the pests. So it's great to go away and know that your garden's working for you.
That's a very attractive point of permaculture.
Yeah.
So you have made a design yourself for this garden. You started out with flat green pasture, is that right?
Oh no, there were some fruit trees here. They were a bit degraded and had a lot of grass around them, and grass retards the growth of the plants, so an important thing was mulching them. And I had plants that sadly I had to cut out. They were in the wrong place. They were growing up in the power lines. They were dangerous big eucalypt plants about to, you know, fall over on the house. It was a matter of redesigning it to make it the most effective and abundant garden possible.
Could you show me your design, what you've thought out?
The first, this is a concept design.
Yeah.
A concept design basically looks at the basics. So where am I going to put my vegetables? Where am I going to put my fruit trees? Where am I going to put my herbs? Where's the barbecue going to go?
Very important.
Yes.
Right here.
I've even got a bush food snack track there with Australian native bush foods, because I think it's important to incorporate a lot of native plants where possible.
Oh, there's the bush foods, yes.
And by having this, I can then go on to the next stage, and the next stage is actually detailed planting, which I'll show you.
Yeah.
This is the detailed design of just a small area of my garden. So I call this the bush food snack track. So it's native bush foods that the Aboriginal people in Australia would have eaten before white people came. And for me, it's part of understanding the Aboriginal culture is understanding what they ate and eating what they ate. Sometimes it's a bit tart or difficult for our taste buds, but we learn to work with the bush foods and make them tasty and integrate them into our own cuisine. When I first moved in, and one of the first things was earthworks. And it's also one of the most difficult things to do earthworks when you first move in, because you least know your property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is 3 months later, and as you can see, there's an abundance of food with corn in the foreground, a lot of tomatoes, and probably 80% of my fruit and veg needs met already.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
Mulching is a really important part of permaculture, because when there's grass around, it retards the growth of anything around it. So the cardboard kills the grass and also turns the soil into a lot more softer soil and a lot more easier to work with. This used to be an old driveway here, so we're mulching the driveway, and next you'll see what happened.
So, just to understand it well, you have a driveway, you put cardboard on it.
I'd put down fertiliser first.
What kind of fertiliser?
This was a chicken manure.
Yeah.
And then double layer of cardboard, overlapping very well, because I've got aggressive kikuyu grass.
Yeah.
And then a mulch hay on top of that, making sure the mulch hay has got no weed seeds.
Oh, yeah.
And then this is the same site as that mulch driveway 3 months later. You can see banana growing in the foreground, watermelon, and that's a dinosaur gourd growing up on the teepee. There's even a little pond in the background.
ouders zijn naar Australië geëmigreerd en doen daar aan permacultuur. Rene en Lorraine van Raders zijn 2 Nederlanders die hun baan hebben opgezegd om volgens de permacultuurmethode te kunnen leven.
Thinking about our impact on the environment and what we can do to minimize our impact on the environment. And so the less land that we can use to, for instance, eat, then the more land can be put back into, for instance, native vegetation or doing other worthwhile things. And so, it's actually very difficult to define permaculture in a nutshell, because I think as you walk around the property, you'll see that we do so many things, but that's all for the same reason, and the reason is that we're trying to minimize our impact.
I mean, if you look at the destruction of the landscape, people always are complaining about mining and forestry, but it's agriculture that really makes the big impact.
I see. And
permaculture is an attempt at sustainable agriculture, and it started off by being based on perennial plants instead of most agriculture, which is based on annual plants. It moved to a system that's based on perennial plants.
So what you do,
and it's expanded from that. I mean, to where it is today, it's a design system that encompasses a lot more besides agriculture.
It works with nature, with the forces of nature. Is that a good way to put it?
Sure.
It does, but it incorporates people into the system, as well as the animals and the plants.
I see.
Yeah.
So what you've done is you because you had a different job, right? You haven't done this all your life. What happened? Well, what did you do before this?
Well, when I met Lorraine, or soon after I met Lorraine, I became the manager for the largest McDonald's in New Zealand.
Really?
And then I think after 5 or 6 years, we decided we didn't want to consume as much, and that money wasn't the necessity. We didn't want to go back to work for 8 to 10 hours a day. We wanted to spend time doing important things and doing something that made a difference in the world. And we also wanted to bring our children up into a healthy place with parents around them, rather than having parents working away all the time.
Right, and that's what usually happens nowadays.
Yeah.
And then how did you come in contact with this method of permaculture?
Well, first we came here. When we came here, this was grass. There was nothing here but grass and a few trees. But and I didn't know anything about gardening. When we first came here, I didn't realise you had to take the plastic bag off the tree before you put it in the ground.
Oh, it doesn't look like this anymore now.
But I learned from other gardeners. I love reading, and that's how I first came into contact with permaculture. I saw a book in the library and I picked it up and I said, wow, that's interesting, but way too hard, and I put it back. And a bit later on I picked it up again, and then later still I did a course, and I think the course changed my life, or our lives. It made us think.
Yeah.
And once you think, you can't go back. You know, once you've changed in your mind, you can't go back to how you were living before.
Yeah, you become too conscious of what an impact you
That's right. Well, also
have.
One of the main things about taking on permaculture in your life is taking on responsibility. And once you start thinking, well, what is the ethic?
Field Day, een dag van samenkomst.
I just come along,
What is this field day about?
This is a field day put on by the Sustainable Living Club. It's a group of like-minded people who are interested in organics and permaculture. And what we do is we go to each other's houses and we look at the good things that we're doing and the mistakes that we've made, and we hopefully learn from each other. The people that go away are hopefully inspired to do the good things and hopefully learn not to do the mistakes that other people have made. It's a very friendly group of people. We share our information and share our seeds.
The other thing that when a hive gets really stroppy, like they can do, if they're not happy or things are not quite right, they can actually get quite stroppy. And one aim in life is to make cells to put honey in. And so that actually in a week you can go back and that hive will be so quiet.
Mites and some.
And varroa mite.
There's nasty mites waiting.
She said to me that because it's the giant garlic, you probably will be alright. You can tolerate it having warm weather. It's a new story,
Look at the colour of the eggs. This is how an egg's supposed to look. Mostly from the chickens eating the green.
What do you feed them to get it so very orange?
This is a free-range chicken egg, so a chicken that's allowed to eat what it wants to eat. Mostly.
Really? And it tastes different?
I think it just... Would you like to try? I don't know.
I got one little